Good morning. Today's Monday. It's day 15 and welcome back to the vlog. For today's vlog, I wanted to try and put a structure to it. Since this is going to be a little bit more of a regular cadence now, I thought I'd give you something to expect each week. So for starters, I'll just recap the past couple of days, how those runs went, and then I'll talk a little bit more about what I'll be doing this week, what to expect, what runs are coming up, and then towards the end, I'm going to try something a little different. Hope you all enjoy it. So let's dive in. So for yesterday's run, I went out in the high heat of the day. Holy shit. Which was preceded by an apology. So it's Saturday, about to do my 3-mile run, but before I do, I have to apologize to anyone I've ever criticized for running at the high heat of the day, because it's 11 o'clock and it's 87 degrees, and I understand why you're doing it. There's no other time to do it. So here we go. I also came to the realization that for whatever reason, I cannot pace myself anymore. It's either too fast or too slow. There's no in between. And I think what it is I'm way more deliberate about the paces I'm running now. Whereas a couple months ago when I was going out, I'm just go run based on feel. It's been a very long time since I've had to actually control that pace, and honestly, the pace that I'm running right now is a little slower than what I typically would, which I think is fine. It's just a little more difficult to control. But went on a 4-mile run yesterday and it was perfect. The pacing was there. Again, ran in the high heat of the day because it's the only time I had to go out and run. But it was a perfect wrap to the week. So that brings us to this week. This week we have 5 runs on the calendar, starting with a 4-mile run on Tuesday, followed by 3 more 4s and a 5-mile long run on Sunday. Okay, so here's the part where I wanted to try something a little different. This week I've been listening to a couple podcasts with the guest of Dr. Andrew Huberman. More specifically, I listened to the Rich Roll podcast as well as the Joe Rogan podcast that he was on, the first one, which I'm devouring right now. So I'll link both those down below that way you can go check them out if you want to. Anyway, Andrew, forgive me, I'm gonna look at notes here that way I don't butcher his title, but Andrew is a neuroscientist and a tenured professor in the Department of Neurobiology at Stanford University School of Medicine. See, I butchered it and I was reading it. He's made numerous important contributions to the fields of brain development, brain plasticity, and neural regeneration and repair. So what I thought I'd do today is try and summarize just a small portion of his talk on Joe Rogan. So the question, or I guess the answer that I wanted to try and summarize is to the question, if you're an adult and want to learn a new skill, What's the best way to force your brain to make the changes or trigger plasticity? Now, this idea of forcing your brain into plasticity is super fascinating to me. Over the past, 5, 6, 7 years, I've been super focused on how do I get better? Better at life, better at any skill that I try and pick up. So this idea of being able to force your brain into a state of change or adaptation is just something that is super curious about and wanted to know more. So in order for me to force my brain into a state of plasticity, selfishly, I am going to try and summarize his answer. Hopefully forces my brain to understand the concept a little better. Now, I want to throw out the caveat, I'm not an expert in this whatsoever, so if you're interested in the topic and want to just double check my answer and make sure it's totally correct, because hopefully it's gonna be close, but either way, again, I'll throw a link in the description. That way you can go directly to that portion of the conversation. So, here we go. All right, so there are 2 parts to triggering plasticity. So part 1 is the learning trigger. This is the part where you're alerting your brain to a certain change or cueing it that something's different in its environment. And part 2 is the process of entering deep sleep or deep relaxation. And this is the part where those changes, those connections and changes in the neurons actually are locked in, getting you to a point where whatever the task is can be performed reflexively later on down the road. So 2 parts, the learning trigger and then deep sleep or relaxation. So for this, we're just going to focus on part 1, or the learning trigger. There are 2 things that gate the learning trigger, and that's noradrenaline and acetylcholine. So noradrenaline is your body's natural way of forcing action. It's produced when you are kicked out of autopilot and can cause you to feel agitated or uncomfortable. Now, most people stop there. When they start to feel that sense of agitation or being uncomfortable, they stop and they try and return back to a state of safety or comfort. But it's imperative that you lean in and you embrace that uncomfortableness to force your brain into a state of plasticity. So next, you take that alerted level, or that heightened level of alertness, and you focus in super narrow to whatever the task at hand is, and by forcing that focus, that intense state of focus, your brain starts to release acetylcholine to the location that learning is taking place. Now, the other fascinating part to this whole puzzle is the role dopamine can play in the process. So dopamine is your body's natural way of rewarding you or encouraging you to continue down a certain path or repeat a certain process. It's released anytime you think you're going down the right path. So it's best associated with, let's say, money or a great performance or teamwork, etc. So the cool thing about dopamine is that it can actually regulate or buffer your noradrenaline. The reason why this is important is your brain actually stops voluntary control of the muscle when noradrenaline levels hit a certain threshold. So you might ask the question of why do I quit? I feel like I can keep going on. My muscles have the energy, but I don't have the willpower, or I can't continue to push through. Well, what's happening, or what they think is happening, is that your noradrenaline has hit a certain threshold where your brain shuts off and can't do anymore. All right, I'm going to draw conclusions here, but this could potentially be the process behind the glorified second win. So you're 3/4 of the way through a marathon. Your muscles still have the fuel or the gas to keep going, but your brain quite literally doesn't. So unless you can evoke that dopamine dump to push those noradrenaline levels back down, you're going to be shit up a creek. So you might be asking, how do you evoke or how do you trigger that dopamine hit? So there are a few ways that you can trigger that dopamine. Some trigger it through a sense of purpose, a sense of, I know this is what I'm supposed to be doing. Some can trigger it through play. So I really enjoy doing this. I want to continue doing it. Or through a sense of urgency, like if I don't get X, I am quite literally going to die. Or one other way is through humor. Again, I'm gonna draw conclusions here, but my brother had a great example of this last week. So last week, during his firefighter training, on the back end of a strenuous workout, his trainer had the group hold out a 7-pound axe at arm's length away from the body. Now, eventually Jack got to the point where the pain was so intense that all he could do was laugh. But by laughing, he was able to forget about the pain and push through. Now, he could just be insane, but to me, it sounds like he evoked a dopamine hit that flushed out just enough noradrenaline that allowed him to continue on and push through. So to boil it down, to learn a new skill, you need an intense urgency and focus, followed by a period of deep relaxation or deep sleep, and the ability to leverage that dopamine response to push through when times get tough, and then encourage yourself to continue on, to repeat that process until it gets to a point where it's natural, and you don't have to think about it. So, sounds pretty simple, right? Either way, I hope you enjoyed this episode. If not, leave a comment down below. Would love your feedback, and we'll catch you next time.